It's really, really easy to be bland and robotic and bee-boo bop, here's the damn contract. It's really easy to slide into that. What's up, guys? My name is Reese Alley. I'm a partner and CEO at a company called SCA Construction. We're a stormwater management company that is a little over $4 million a year. I wanted to make this video because I, in the past, have been accused of being robotic and just non-emotional, and it really got me into a lot of trouble with a handful of clients. And I think it's in these situations where you're trying to balance being professional and having a contract and following that contract, and then just straight up stiff arming people, and it really gets under people's skin. And especially if you're in an industry where, like for example in landscaping, where a lot of it is opinion based, you're really selling the creation of someone's dream. Emotions are a really big part of that, and I think you can get lost in the minutia of dealing with the contract and keeping things in bounds. And so I'm really talking to myself when I have all of these different you're a hero or you're a zero. I was a zero for quite a while, and while I'm still working on being a hero, this is just what I've learned, and improving a lot of these things has really helped me tremendously in dealing with our clients, even on the bigger commercial side. And so hopping right in, so seek first to understand. And I've got 3 of these different slides, but seeking to understand them first is absolutely massive, because there's so many different instances where I would get into these situations where, let's say there was a disagreement on a retaining wall, you know, the location of it, and you might have had it on the scope, you might have had the measurements, you might have had the height, the length, and the width, but it just doesn't look right to the customer. And for you, if they come along saying, hey, this is the wrong place, or this is the wrong height, it's the wrong color, as long as you're being honest with yourself, whether you're right or not, it's really easy to whip out your measuring tape and say, well, it's 40 feet long and it's 4 feet tall, and that's all I was supposed to do. You might not understand the fact that it was supposed to be a little bit farther in or a little bit farther out, because you never learned that they needed X number of feet to play soccer in the front yard or something. I'm not sure. But whatever it is, there's typically some agreement that you can come to that somewhere is between exactly what they think and exactly what you think. Most of the time, reality lies somewhere in between. You'll know if you're a hero if you turn towards them, you ask how they're feeling, and then what they believe is the right answer. Because I will tell you right now, the absolute wrong thing to do is to hear them out and then say, okay, well, that's great, but here's what it says on the contract, and it's 40 feet long and 4 feet tall, and that's all I was supposed to do. If you don't figure out what they actually wanted in the first place, and you don't at least hear out their complaint, it could be something small. It could be the fact that they're only complaining because they're not sure that they'll have enough room when the project's done for the soccer. But little do you know that part of the project was also building out the back of it, so you're actually going to have that much room. But maybe that wasn't communicated, and so even though there was a really simple answer, if you just dig a little bit deeper into what their actual problem is, you just stiff arm them, everybody gets pissed, and then you start going to stuff like lawsuits, and people start going that direction, and then they start holding your money, all because you didn't slow down and ask them, hey, why are you frustrated? I see the wall it was supposed to be 40 feet long and 4 feet tall. It looks like it's in the right spot. What is the issue? And then typically she might tell you that, well, I didn't really share this at first, but I really needed enough space to have the soccer field for Jimmy. Even if it wasn't in the bid to put dirt or something like that extra in the bid, it might be a really easy add-on or a change order or something like that, and then you can still accomplish it without having to tear down the whole wall or get into a big fiasco with the customer. You know you're a zero in this case if you only talk about your point of view, you keep repeating what you already said, you're just a broken record, and then ignoring anything they contribute to the conversation. You get into kind of defense mode, and we'll go over that later, and just you shut down, and then nobody hears anything of what the other person's saying. And it's a really unproductive conversation. Moving to the second one is shaping their reality constantly. And again, as far as how this ties into being emotional, it's really easy to be bland and robotic and bee-boo bop, here's the damn contract. It's really easy to slide into that. In a positive notion, explain what's going on, set realistic goals and expectations, and explain what could happen, what you're trying to do to prevent it. And so odds are there's a curveball in every single project. It's just what it is. You just got to have your glove ready, but don't ever paint this picture that everything's perfect and it goes fine and there's never any issue. If all you're doing the whole time is you get the deposit check and then you mobilize and you show up, and then you don't talk to them at all in between when they ask you questions, you just expect them to, I guess, look at what you're doing and be okay with it, they're not contractors. This is a little bit different in the commercial world, but speaking more towards the residential side of things, or maybe the smaller commercial world, you have to set realistic expectations, and more importantly, you have to set realistic communication expectations. And so they might be expecting you to communicate twice a day or 4 times a day, when in reality, if you had sat down with them in the beginning and say, hey, here's what we're going to plan on communicating. We're going to do daily updates or weekly updates or monthly updates, depending on how long the project is. That way, they're expecting to hear from you at certain times, and it really cuts down on a lot of the emergencies that might come up at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, when really it could wait till morning. And it gives you an opportunity to really paint the picture of what's going on at the job site. Is the rain that's coming in 2 days a really, really big factor, whether you get done or not, or whether this thing that you just installed needs to be finished now or later? You know, do you have to move back sod because of the weather or something like that? If you get in front of it and you tell them before they ask you, it's an incredible way to, one, build trust constantly. So if you ever need to cash in some trust brownie points or whatever, that stuff is in the bank, and it's a lot easier to work through negative situations. And then talking about if you're a zero, waiting for them to reach out to you, like I just mentioned, is horrible. You should never, ever, ever. If they are calling you first to ask you questions, on some occasions that's normal, but if they're always the one calling you first and you're just not telling them anything, it's always a lack of trust. It is building a lack of trust. You are actively losing brownie points every single time that happens. And so there's pillow talk at night while the project's going with their spouse. There's dinner table talk. And whenever you don't talk to them, what's happening inside is they're saying, well, I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he still hasn't talked to me at all. There's this thing I've been staring at outside my house, and it looks like it's going the right direction, but it also looks like he didn't do this thing. He hasn't told me about it, and so I'm going to talk about it with my spouse negatively for 3 days before we build up enough anger to actually call you and reach out. And then that's where, when a customer calls you and they're just pissed out of nowhere, and it seems like they just came up with this on the fly, that's where it comes from. It wasn't on the fly, it wasn't off the hip. It was something they probably talked about for a little while, just because you didn't communicate anything or give them, I guess, create a space where they can ask questions, and it's comfortable to tear down those walls and ask any kind of question they have, no matter how small they think it might be. And so if you have a bland or pessimistic attitude when explaining things, that is a Debbie Downer. Even if the project's going great, if you always are just moping around and sad, you're never communicating the positive side of things, or at least having a positive attitude, then they're going to have a negative attitude, and they're always going to think things are doomy and gloomy, and it's going to affect their attitude as well. You complain about your customers always asking questions. They shouldn't have that many questions if you're communicating. And again, you shouldn't ever get mad at it, because you should be giving them an opportunity and a space to ask questions, whether that's at the end of the day, once a week, or something like that. Define a time where your customers can ask these kinds of questions. Now, on to the final one. I think this is probably one of the most important. This is typically the one that if you ever get into lawsuits or you go down that road, this is typically where it stems from, just being honest. And this is actually a term that I read out of a book, and it was actually focused more towards couples and interpersonal relationships. But there's a thing called DPA, diffuse physiological arousal. And basically what that is, and this is more common in men. I wouldn't say it's not possible with women, but it's more common with men. And it's basically when someone criticizes you, they blame you, they label you, or do something that puts you in a box. Whether it's true or not, you go into basically defense mode, your cortisol levels go up, your adrenaline starts pumping. You basically lose access to your sense of humor, sense of positivity, and ability to stay calm. Let's say a customer comes at you with this, kind of ridiculous comment where, your work is sloppy or this or that. Typically those moments, they're just seeking attention and they're seeking answers. Maybe it's not something that's wrong with you. It's something wrong with the job or the process, or they're mad about something. They could have been fired that day at work. You never know. Instead of staying calm, working through the situation, hearing out their problems, listening to them, attuning to what they're saying, you go into this state. Your heart rate goes up. You don't want to talk. You cross your arms, and then you're talking to everybody like you know what's going on. They don't know anything. And then they get pissed, you get pissed, and then everybody's just mad. And then that's where typically it happens, where they start threatening lawsuits, holding money, or it's just a really, really damaging result to your reputation. And even if you finish the job and get paid, that's all right. Negative spreads 28 times faster than positive. And that was a statistic I saw a while ago, but I will say I think it's true because it's much easier to talk about negative things to people. And I guarantee you, even if you make it out of the job alive, all of their friends, families, neighbors, and relatives are all going to know how much of a horrible contractor you are, when in reality you could have just stayed calm, and then they might have even apologized to you later. I've had that happen a lot, but I've also had it happen to where I got so in my head and in a box of something that really wasn't that big of a deal, and I let it be a big deal, and it turned into a really big deal, a really big, expensive deal. Stay calm even when they're angry. Always answer them with the expectation of solving the problem, and then acknowledge where you have actually fallen short. That takes a lot of humility. It takes a lot to get down on one knee, and if they bring out something that, hey, you actually messed up on, then here's a news flash. You should probably tell them that and say, hey, here's the mistake, here's what we're going to do to fix it. And to be honest, if it's a really big mistake, you're human. And as long as you communicate that, and you've been building brownie points the whole time, you've been building communication, trust points the whole time, a lot of times they'll work with you on it. I had a customer just last week. It was a $40,000 project. I think I made a video about this a while ago, but I had to burn $10,000 aside because of a mistake on the contractor side of the deal. We were a subcontractor for a guy that he hired. When we were going back through just getting a game plan to finish out the project, he even said to us, he's like, hey man, I know y'all lost big on that last one. Let me know if y'all need anything to keep going. Let me know if y'all need anything to cushion the blow a little bit. And so he was offering to give us more money, literally out of pity, just because he knows people are human. He knows we're not trying to pull a cover over everybody's eyes. He just wanted to make sure that we were taken care of. You're never going to get those offers if you're in defense mode and you're mean and you're angry all the time, and it's just something that is going to make everybody frustrated. You might be a zero in this category if you hide behind the contract, you raise your voice and lose your temper, and you blame your customers for the issue. It's never the customer's fault. It's just your fault for not setting the right expectation. At the end of the day, you are the contractor. It's your responsibility for setting those expectations, and anything that falls short of that, if you don't take personal responsibility for, how are you supposed to solve the problem? That goes for the job site. It goes for your employees. It goes for all of your relationships. Raising your voice and then hiding behind the contract. If going back to the earlier example about Susie that had questions about the retaining wall size, because in her mind, she needed the soccer field for little Joey or whatever. If you just talked about, well, we had a contract to do a 40-foot by 4-foot retaining wall, and here's where it was supposed to be, and this is what I did, and this is what you're getting. Versus, okay, well, it is the length that we bid. Everything looks to be fine. I guess, is there something else you were expecting to get or you were hoping to achieve with the retaining wall? And then she goes into the whole thing about how she needs a soccer field. And then you propose, hey, well, what if we just bring in another 6 loads of dirt and then put it off the backside, build out this area, and we can do that for $2,000. And then she's like, oh my gosh, that would be great. Or maybe you meet her halfway in between because you technically should have had that expectation and pulled that out of her from the beginning. If you're a real hero, you'll meet her halfway in between, but most of the time they'll just do a change order and then everybody rides off into the sunset. And so it's really easy for it to go one way or the other between getting defensive or staying positive. I think if y'all follow these different bullet points, I'm learning new stuff every day about how to do this, especially on the bigger level of things. Now that we've gotten into projects that are in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands on a regular basis, where we're dealing with board of directors, engineer, contractors, our own people, also with my management team. There's a lot of different parties to please and a lot of people that had certain opinions and things that they think are correct, when in reality, it's somewhere of a mix in between. And so if you can master this kind of stuff on the small scale, dealing with just homeowners, which again, you can still do $1 million projects with homeowners, it's definitely possible, but you will get ahead, you'll get farther down the road, and more importantly, y'all's name is going to spread, your reputation is going to grow. So I hope this video helps. If y'all have any questions, concerns, or comments, or you wanted to hear something else, leave it in the comments down below, and I will do my best to answer. So have a good Sunday.